Hey, hope you're having an amazing day. Cutie's Creations here with another message on a restitution. So yesterday we talked about, and for the last couple of days we've been talking about free healthcare with the focus on mental health. So restitution is encompassing 5 things. That is the $2.9 million for every African American man, woman, and child. The free healthcare with the focus on mental health. Free equality education, financial literacy, and judicial reform. Those are what we believe are the cornerstones to a more happier life and to balance the scales for a more perfect union. So those are the things that we are fighting to get, and not just fighting to get through legislation, but working on in our private lives. I always want to mention that as we stand, more African Americans are becoming more what they would say woke, this woke culture, which I love, that are educating themselves on how to break these chains, how to break these cycles, how to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as well as your community by spreading these messages. That's why I got onto YouTube. It was the last thing that I wanted to do. I'm used to organizing, talking face to face. Online is not really my thing, but I felt like in order for us to amplify what we truly wanted and to share these messages out and to make sure that we were doing our due diligence by our community. You're working so hard for your community, you also have to give them the information. Education is birthed in our reality. And that reality is the giving and receiving of information. The more you get, the more you can make a sound decision in regards to yourself. The less information you have, you're not making as many sound decisions. You don't have enough data to be able to make those sound decisions. If you're basing it off of, okay, so let's talk about the timeline. How when they had very little knowledge of how mental health affected people, they weren't doing it the right way. And when they had very little education, they weren't doing it the right way. As we learn more about finance, we know now that with more knowledge, it's not really helping, I would say. It's kind of balancing itself out. It has its good with its bad, but to know the good and the bad is valuable as well. And in judicial, laws are ever changing, and because the world's ever changing, and that's what's so great about law. Like, you can change it as the time goes on. There was no laws on abuse of women and children and seniors, and now there's all different types of laws that fit into that. And which I really love, because we are now coming across this era where we don't think the things that we just took like as normal as being normal. These were traumatic situations that we all had to suffer through, whether you be the person who gave it out or the person who was in receiving mode. Both of them are victims, and a victim of circumstances that we can now change. And with that change, we want to make sure that we have the scales balanced for African Americans, where we are not being left out of this discussion because of whatever reason, whether it be racism, willful ignorance. All of those things can affect us in such a big way, and we want to make sure that we are doing our utmost due diligence to step outside of that, to break these chains and these cycles, and to get to a more perfect union. So today we are talking about Sigmund Freud's presence in psychoanalyzation in mental health. So this was the late 1800s to the early 1900s. The late 19th and early 20th centuries introduced psychoanalyzation, popularized by figures like Sigmund Freud. This approach explored unconscious motivations and childhood experiences as rooted cause of mental illness. While controversial, it shifts perspectives towards talk therapy and psychotherapy exploration, laying groundwork for modern psychotherapy. So, once again, this was the late 1800s. So now they're closing down these asylums and everything. Well, no, they're not closing them down yet, but we're leaving out of that slavery area into the 19th century, right? And we're going into Jim Crow. And if you see the timeline, how they started to treat people that were colonizers for the mental health that was going on. And how did they treat them without study? We were the study. They weren't going to do these studies on the colonizers unless you were of a certain income background. So people who were poor and white got the same treatment, maybe a little bit better than the black slaves or the ones who were coming out of slavery into the Jim Crow era, who were going into these asylums and they were trying to figure out a way to treat mental health. And they had no real treatment for it, so they were doing electroshock therapy, all different types of inhumane things. And once they start to recognize that the cause of it is coming from trauma from the childhood, and we had to start really bearing down on those childhood wounds and seeing how we can fix them, that's when a more humane therapy came about. But make no mistakes, when they were trying all this stuff out, they were trying it out on us. They haven't really touched on that, and we will get to those timelines. I'm running it congruent with what I'm saying for all of it, but they leave things out. And I don't think they do it purposefully, because before I used to think of it as a sign of racism, but if the people who are writing this history and who are gathering this data, they are gathering it from their side of things, right? And what if their side of things is all from their environment? And there is none of us in their environment. So let's say that I'm doing it. My studies would be biased because there's hardly any people of other nationalities in my environment for me to be able to bounce these ideas off of. Nor would I probably even ask in the ones that were. So these things were lopsided based off the fact of the environment itself. I'm not going to collect data from somebody who I don't feel as though is a human. We were categorized as less than a human, less value than a horse. In the Constitution, they have never changed that. They have put in amendments for us not to be slaves and everything, but they have never, which I thought was crazy, because there's no amendment that is there or any constitutional thing that is there for the colonizers who raped and pillaged, but neither here nor there. Like I said, we are not against them. As a matter of fact, there is no healing without the collective. If you don't feel connected to the people that are around you, I have no idea where you have been. And if you don't, you need to seek some mental health counseling, because you should feel connected to every single individual that is walking and breathing on this earth, because for one, they possibly at one point is going to give you something that is very valuable, either be information, something that makes you smile, or their very presence has fed you in the ways of maybe they're the garbage man and they pick up your garbage. Where does those things go? Do you want to do the garbage? Did you pick that job? Your mailman who brings you the mail every single day to make sure that you have the right information to pay your bills and stuff. The list can go on and on and on, but what I'm saying is that connectedness should be there just based off the fact that if you live your life every day and you have lived it in quite a comfortable space, there are millions of moving parts all around you that you don't have to do, that you aren't named. Like, okay, the setup right here, all of this stuff was made not by me, but I'm able to utilize it in the most basic of ways to be able to use it for my platform and everything. But these things don't come about without somebody making them. So you should feel connected to the people who have given you such beauty. You should feel connected to the people who are doing these small tasks that for you don't even acknowledge, but they're huge in the ways of money for their families, and it creates their vacations, and it makes the world go round. You should always feel connected to every single individual. So I'm not taking out the fact that I'm not taking out that the connection from our white brothers and sisters. What I'm telling you is that the scales have been unbalanced for so long. And let me tell you something. People ask me this all the time. And I say the same thing, and then I have to retract it, but I still feel the same way. I have to just correct myself because I want to have a better reality, and I can't do what people that I don't like did. But people ask me all the time, like, oh, would you hire me? And some of them are of another nationality from me. And every time I've gotten the opportunity, I get it with my own business now. But even in the past, when I was working under some other organization, I would always hire all Black people. And that's funny, right? Because we want the white people of the country to give us a shot, when only thing they're doing is something that's in their nature. Why wouldn't I want my white brothers and sisters to be standing next to me in these jobs and everything? Yes, I would love to give other people a shot, but if at my first choice, I choose what I'm familiar with, and I do the same. I have to pull myself to the table myself, because nobody's there to naysay me. I'm the boss. And my boss in the past would always trust me to make the right decisions and everything, but that's wrong, because of the fact that if I want them to have the same amount of interest and investment in me to give me a shot, I have to give other people a shot as well. And I always have to be cognizant of that, because I don't want to become the jailee has now become the jailer. I'm now just as bad as the people who have traumatized me and my lineage, and I'm walking the same steps, but that is a cycle. Do you realize that when somebody has traumatized you and traumatized people in your past, because I told you I haven't experienced these big strides of racism or anything. I didn't grow up in that era. A lot of the racism that I experienced present day are very undercover. It's not anything I've never been. Well, no, I have. In politics, you go to people all the time. So yes, I've been called the N-word and everything. So I can't say that, but racism on a Jim Crow level, no. Have I been sprayed with hoses? No. Have I been beaten and bruised? And none of that. But the mental health that I have suffered under is broad, and it has its depth. And I have forced other people into that with my will for ignorance. And we have when you want something to be equal, you have to balance the scales on your side too. You have to make sure that you're being fair too. You have to be in a space where it's not just valuable to you and yours, but it's valuable to the world. So, let me get back to it. So, we were talking about the Sigmund Freud thing and how they stepped into psychotherapy and everything, but that still excluded us. And how it showed up in your body, one of the ways is digestive issues. Mental health struggles often manifest physically in the guts, commonly called the gut-brain connection. Anxiety and depression can contribute to digestive problems like irritable bowel syndrome, IBS, Nausea or appetite changes, it's due to the brain's influence on the gut function. Communication from brain to gut are consistently active via the vagus nerve and neurotransmitters like serotonin, 90% of which is produced in your gut. So all your serotonin is really produced in your gut. Anxiety and depression can disrupt that balance. Significant signs of this is bloating, cramps, diarrhea, and constipation. Once your gut bacteria is altered, it further impacts mood, and it creates a loop that keeps recreating mental and digestive health problems. So, when you have so many mental health issues, it starts to develop in your gut. And I can tell you, you haven't seen too many people out in our reality, in our world, that don't have like a pudge or some type of, not just a pudge or a beer belly, bigger bellies or smaller ones because you can't keep anything down. These are signs of high stress and anxiety and depression and suffering from mental health. People don't acknowledge these things because they're going to a medical doctor. So that's what happens. You are put into these high stress and traumatic situations. You react to them, and after a while your body is so used to it, but now it has developed these physical ailments, and in those physical ailments you want to go treat them, like muscle pain or anything like that. So then you go and you say, hey doc, can I get something for muscle pain? And they try to treat those symptoms, and you never go to see the mental, and nobody ever addresses that side because they want you to just come back to the physical. So if you're suffering from IBS, they give you something for IBS, not understanding that it's the ulcers that was from the anxiety that been left unchecked for too long, and now you are suffering from it in a physical form. And no, they're not going to send you to a therapist. They're sending you to you're going to a regular hospital to try to treat the symptoms of these problems, but you're not really treating what caused it. And once you don't get to the root of what caused it, you're automatically going to suffer the same things over and over again, which makes a cycle. And this is where we are today in America, where our medical field is treating more of the symptom side, and our mental health field is way too expensive for most people to afford in the first place, so they don't go, or has been stigmatized so bad that you feel like you can't really talk about it or have a therapist in the first place to be able to get that help that you need. Or it's been, you've been willfully ignorant, where you know that there's a problem, you see that it's showing up physically and in all these other forms, and you refuse to acknowledge it because what they have taught you is to ignore it and move forward. We have to have a better way of doing things. We have to start healing ourselves, and that starts with the $2.9 million. That starts with the free healthcare with the focus on mental health, and making sure that we have enough money in that pot for real therapists and psychiatrists so we can get the help that we need. That starts with financial literacy. So you don't have a high stress situation every time you have a financial problem. And free quality education so you can get those good finances, so you can get that good mental health when the rest of your insurance doesn't cover it. When that $2.9 million runs out, when it doesn't go on to the next generation because that's only meant for this generation. Once it is gone, it's gone, and you want to be able to still make sure and maintain your lifestyle. So that's what we want. I want to thank you for your time, your energy, and all of your support. Please let me know what you thought of this subject matter. I'm doing this whole thing with just a shot in the dark. I'm hoping that this is good information for every single person, and maybe it overlays what you already know and everything, and there's only tidbits in there for you to learn. But I want you to have this in your mind so you can share with others. So like, share, subscribe, comment down below, let me know what you think so we can have a dialogue. And thank you for being here, and have a great and amazing day.